Just wanted to make a quick video about how I came to get ADHD and how I got diagnosed and got the medication for it. There's a few questions about this, about how I managed to get this diagnosis and how it came about and whatnot. I was very lucky, actually. I managed to get a psychiatrist, a man, Dr. Julian, out of the Three Towns Resource Centre in Saltcoats. He specialises in the autism spectrum and can identify it really easily. But anyway, so what has happened was when I was being born, my heart stopped, and I was probably starved of oxygen for a good 3 or 4 minutes before I was pulled out of my mother and revived. That left a certain element of brain damage because your brain's still developing for like the first 4 months or something like that when you're born. So it affected me that way. So initially, obviously, it's not apparent that it's caused that kind of damage. But when you start going to school and you start suffering from difficulties, that's when it all starts to become more apparent that way. It starts to highlight itself. I also have dyslexia, so I have ADHD, dyslexia, probably a certain element of Asperger's, but that's just, ADHD never really comes by itself. There's always like other issues involved, and that's probably one of the problems. Those other issues, like dyslexia and the learning issues and whatnot, they take a front line in anything that people notice, because the people notice those first. They don't necessarily always notice, and mine's is quite subtle. In my mind, it's not subtle, but in what I project to people is quite subtle. So it's quite difficult for people to recognise that I actually do have ADHD. I've spent a lifetime trying to hide it, to be fair. I also suffer from tics, which is probably more down to complex Tourette syndrome, but it's not like Tourette's that everybody else knows. It's an involuntary tic that I've got, and sometimes that can highlight that there is something deeper going on, that you've got a tic or something. So I went through that when I was a kid, and then when I was about 11 years old, suffering from incoherent, impulsive behaviour, my mother took me to get looked at and diagnosed with whatever it was I was suffering from. Turned out to be ADHD. This is when I was 11. Now, bear in mind, I'm 39 now. So we're talking like back when ADHD people were still denying its existence, and people still today deny its existence. But you grow up with ADHD, you have ADHD, and you have somebody come over and tell you it doesn't exist, and in your mind, in the fog in your mind, I just look at them like they're idiots, man. I just look at them like they're stupid. They don't suffer from ADHD, and they just think it's a behavioural issue. It's a psychological, issue where the person suffering from so-called ADHD, like it doesn't exist. That person is just seeking attention, and that is not the case. And you have no control when you're young. You have no coping mechanisms to stop your impulsive behaviour. I've had several broken bones, and I've got a scar here, a scar there in the back of my head, a scar on my back, I've got scars down my legs from where I was always falling over and hurting myself, broken arms, and like my behavioural issues I couldn't control them. I couldn't stop them from happening. I couldn't, like, there was no way for me to, uh, and a lot of kids are being put on medication at a really early age now when they're being diagnosed with ADHD. And I think that's stopping them from developing coping mechanisms. Because I don't actually take that high a dose of my ADHD medication because I've already learned to develop. When I got diagnosed when I was 11, I didn't get medication. I should just explain that. I only got medication when I was about 37, about 3 years ago. So it's it's I already developed lots of coping mechanisms, and the diagnosis of when I was 11 got overlooked for years and years and years. It got overlooked, and the doctors were prescribing me antidepressants and all kind of prescribing me all kinds of things that just weren't working, and some of them actually made me a lot worse. Until I came off them, and then I went back to like my normal frame of mind, And I think that a lot of people think that ADHD people they're stupid, and and they can't do anything and all this kind of stuff. I'm a practical based learner, right? So I learn by hands on. I learn by doing things, right? And I think a lot of people who suffer from this kind of condition are the same way. You can't sit and read from a book and learn academically. And a lot of these academics are useless practically. And I think we live in a practical world where you do need practical skills, a certain element of practical skills, probably not to the extent that I have, but I think you still need these practical skills to achieve things in life, and solely getting a degree or a master's degree or a PhD. I know a girl who's got a PhD in English literature, and don't get me wrong, she's highly intelligent, right? But she's got no practical skills at all. I mean, her practical skills are so limited that I've had to help her with her garden, like organize and whatnot. And then I'll go away for a couple of weeks, and it'll be back to like a complete chaotic state, And I'm very organized in the way that I do things, like I'll do things in a very strategic way to make it easier for everything to operate, But that's just the way my mind works. It might be not the way everybody's mind works, but I learn practically more than I learn academically. I can learn academically, but it's more practical that I learn than the hands-on kind of thing, But anyway, so when I turned about 37, I decided, right, enough of these antidepressants, enough of this garbage that they keep trying to give me all the time. I'm gonna specifically target them and tell them, listen, I believe it's ADHD. I think I've got a fairly good idea that it's ADHD. I'm pretty sure that's what my mother had me diagnosed with when I was 11. I can't really remember, but if you check it up, you might see. And they did. They looked up the documents, the records for that diagnosis when I was a kid, and it was ADHD. All those years of torture and pain, and I had ADHD all along, and it was in my medical records all along. And they try to give me all sorts of crazy I got sectioned a few times. I was in care a few times, like when I was in my 20s, because my mind was all over the place. So, and all of that time, not one of those doctors looked into my historical records to see what it was that I was actually suffering from. If there was any sort of like indication or evidence to suggest what it was I was going through. And then after they discovered this diagnosis when I was 11, because it was a historical diagnosis, I had to get it diagnosed again. So I had to go to Dr. Julian, who I was quite lucky to actually get, and he diagnosed me again. He actually done a whole, and it was very structured, and it was so great the way he did his that appointment to find out whether I had ADHD or not, and it turned out I did, and that's how I managed to get diagnosed again, and that's how I managed to get my medication. So those who are asking about how to get the diagnosis of ADHD, if you believe you've got ADHD, just bring it up with the doctor. Just say to the doctor, look, I think this is ADHD. I think I've got Asperger's. I think I've got SPD or ADD or, or autism. I think I've got something, or complex Tourette syndrome. They're all on the same spectrum. They're all the kind of similar things, and they all manifest themselves quite similarly, but at the same time differently. And I think a lot of the time, if you meet somebody that's had a diagnosis of ADHD, you can see certain traits in their behaviour and certain traits in their personality that you connect with. And you go, fucking hell, I'm quite like him, actually, And you connect with those people more than you connect with normal people. Normal people quite often pawn you off as weird and creepy, just because you're a little bit different. And it's kind of sad that people are still, to this day, treating people with ADHD or Asperger's or whatever it may be in a real negative fashion, I mean, I can't count the amount of times that people have called me creepy or, weird or, like, I kind of don't really bother about it now, to be honest. I don't really care that what they think, and if they call me creepy or weird, I just own that shit. I just go, yeah, so what? I'm creepy, I'm weird. Get over it, like, I don't really give a shit, and I think in a roundabout fashion, one of the the barriers to self-healing of yourself is to just stop caring what other people think, to stop bothering about that shit, because the more you think about it, the more you dwell on what other people think, then that's the more it starts to impact you most. And I think one of the biggest barriers, I mean, you can, a lot of people don't really care what strangers think, but it's about what people who you care about. So you care about people and you care about how they think about you. And if they say something negative to you, if they say something, that can affect you. And that is the biggest barrier. The people that you care about calling you names without fully understanding what you're going through. And I think that can be the biggest barrier. And stopping, I know you're not caring about that person, but you're stopping caring about what they say to you, because what they say to you doesn't impact you. You start to become more of an independent mind, I think, and it took me a long time to become an independent mind. But when I did become an independent mind, it was really like a revelation. My mind was opened up to, like, all the information that I'd picked up over the years. I really couldn't utilize it and access it and use it, in an effective way. And then when I was about 30 odd, like 31 or 32, I really became intelligent enough to work things out for myself, to do things for myself, to start living by myself. I still relied on my father a little bit, and still to this day I do a little bit, and also my girlfriend, she really helps me, because financially, I don't really seem to be able to handle my money very well, and I don't know if that's my impulsiveness, like shopping on Amazon and stuff, like, but she helps me manage that quite well, and I don't think I would be, like, financially secure without her. So there is certain elements of my personality that I still can't control, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm trying my hardest to be a better person every day. So it's quite difficult to do though when you've got ADHD. There's lots of barriers you have to you get over, and people might say, "Oh, get over it. Move on. Get on with your life. This." And those are the kind of comments that you know you wish you could do. You wish you could just switch that switch and just go, right, I'm going to get on with it. I'm going to get on with my life. I'm going to stop all these problems. I'm going to change my brain chemistry just by flicking a switch, and then away I go, but that's not how things work. That's really not how life works, and, when you live in a world that is so structured and so tailored to, like, only the ones that are, able to cope with that kind of structure and those kind of rules. It's hard to deal with that. There's a certain regiment to life, and ADHD people don't have the ability to, or some of them do, but I certainly don't have the ability to, like, adhere to that regiment. I need to have a new challenge every day. I need to have learn something new every day. And if I'm not learning something new every day, if I'm not challenging myself every day, I just feel like I'm dying inside, and I feel like my soul is just withering away. So I think there's a really large bird in the sky. I think it's a heron. Anyway, so sorry, I digressed there. Yeah, so I think if you want to get diagnosed with ADHD and you believe that that is what you have, and also ADHD medication doesn't just help you with ADHD. It helps you with things like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and things like this. All these things, there's certain links being made between these different conditions, and it's all kind of new at the moment, but this ADHD medication can help with a lot of different things, not just ADHD. So like the medication I'm on is methylamphetamide hydrochloride, and basically it's just like methamphetamines, it's speed, right? But it does help with a lot of different types of conditions. It doesn't just help with ADHD. It's helped me, obviously, but I think to get that medication, you have to go through quite a lot in order to get that medication, and more than I think you really should have to go through. But you just have to mention to the doctor, you just have to bring it up with the doctor and just say, look, this is what I believe I've got, this is what I believe I'm suffering from, and this is the medication I think could possibly help me. You won't get that medication without a psychiatric diagnosis, and the psychiatrist will give you the prescription, and the GP will implement that prescription every week for you. That's how it works in Scotland anyway. But yeah, so it can be a bit of a procedure. It can be a bit of a pain in the neck to go through, and it is a bit of a long drawn out process, and it can be arduous to go through. But once you've sorted it, once you've been through that process, and you come out the other side, and you have what you need, you feel much better. Like when I'm on my ADHD medication, like I am this morning, I'm more I'm more in connection with my mind. I'm more I can utilize my thoughts, and I can focus more, and I finish projects that I've started. Like a lot of the time I would start a project and not finish it. And that was a real problem for my ADHD, for me, like previously. But now I finish projects. I finish them, and it's it feels good to be able to push yourself past that last little barrier to finish that project, to finish what you started. And sometimes it becomes like a bit of a hurdle to jump over to finish those projects. It becomes like a I can't it's like a brick wall that you can't penetrate, but then the medication helps you penetrate that wall. It helps you get past that barrier of, I need to finish this project, I need to get it done. And the physical, mental barriers that you put up, and you pressure yourself on you. It's like a cycle of thoughts that, and it's debilitating to not be able to finish these projects that you start. But when you do get your medication and you can finish those projects, it's a lot better. It's a lot better. So just go to the doctor and just say to the doctor, look, this is the situation that I'm in. This is what I'm thinking. I need you to refer me to a psychiatrist and get it done. And it might be a long waiting list and all this kind of shit, like I had to go through, but get through it and get it done, because it's well worth it if you believe it is what you've got. All right. So have a nice day, and see you soon.